26th of April, 2025, Connor Benn received his first loss. It was a fight Conor Benn versus Chris Eubanks Jr., a bitter loss of the fighter who was younger and much more dangerous on the ring. His Instagram videos showed that Benn is leaving no chance to his opponents. Almost all previous fights were ended by knockout. That fight was a bloody brawl, and it is a candidate for a fight of the year. Also, it has a big story, because their fathers also fought twice. Nigel Benn lost that fight by TKO in 1990, and their rematch was a draw by split decision. Turkey already wants a second fight in Saudi Arabia, because that show left no frustrations. Originally, the date for that fight was in 2022. The plan was to make it in Manchester, but suddenly Conor Benn was caught on doping and suspended for 2 years from competing in England. That was a very curious thing because he made 2 fights in United States. On the short notice went Liam Smith. It is very hard to say that he is a top-level boxer. On the paper, it is an easy food for Chris. But in the real fight, it was not so easy for Chris to fight with Liam, and suddenly Chris was cornered and Liam dropped him once. And after a short break, he dropped him for the second time. That is the third loss of Chris Eubank. Of course, the rematch was a part of the contract, and in the next fight, Liam Smith was already knocked out in the 10th round. But the fight looked lazy, not so interesting and dynamic. And Chris was an easy food for Conor Benn. During the investigation, Conor Benn had an option to perform twice in United States. His last fight in the UK was a fight with Chris Van Heerden, a fighter from South Africa. Chris was not a problem for Benn. It was a one-sided beating. Conor Benn is using a very energy-intensive fighting style, as Mike Tyson at his good years. But the big trouble is for those type of fighters. That's why peekaboo is not popular anymore. If the fighter can survive his opponent who is attacking permanently this way, he will burn out, and the fight will be different. Also, this fighting style requires the youth. It is not working anymore after 30 years old. That is the fight with Rodolfo Orozco in United States. Everything started as usual. Conor Benn started to attack hard, fast as he was, but for that time his opponent was not cornered, as it was with Chris Van Heerden, and only after the middle of the fight, Rodolfo started to attack Benn. He is not scared anymore and even rushes forward. Here is another one thing, Benn is smaller than his opponents. That fight was in super welterweight, despite that he fights in welterweight. Then he fought next year in US as well with Peter Dobson in his native weight class, and here right from the first seconds Dobson decided to fight dirty. Conor decided to knock him out right from the first round. Dobson clinched an opponent of course for breaking the rhythm, and approximately in the second round Dobson started to work with Benn's body to slow him down of course, despite that his punches are very dangerous. And already in the 5th round Dobson was not afraid to rush forward, and already Conor saved himself in the clinch. There was no knockout as well. That was a sign for Chris Eubanks Jr. that Conor Benn can't work for so long. The same as Mike Tyson. When he was not able to knock out his opponent, he took it by points. But that fight is a middleweight clash. The difference was very big. Here Chris even failed the weight. Conor Benn made it limit, but everybody knows that in the real fight the difference will be big. Kell Brook was a dominant champion in welterweight who decided to move up for a super fight with Gennady Golovkin, 2 weight classes higher. And of course he was not able to make a weight proper, despite that they are the same size. After that fight, Kell became broken and started to lose his major fights and decided to finish a career being age of 35. Conor Benn is much smaller than Eubank. Despite that he is fighting in that weight class, he is barely higher than Ryan Garcia. The quality of the punch is different, the speed is different, and the weight is different of course. The mental games were wild. Chris Eubank always tried to make some provocation. He performed an egg slap during the face-offs. During the gloves-offs and press conferences they hated each other. But another interesting thing was that Chris Eubank didn't want to talk to his father. They had bad relationships, but right before the entrance we found out that they made up. and for now they are working as one team. Chris Eubank was a huge favorite. The tension was very big, but the fight frustrated nobody. Right from the first round, it was obvious who was smaller. But Ben is much more aggressive. That's why Chris Eubank started to turn on his dirty boxing immediately. The thing number 2, Connor Benn was unable to reach out Chris. His arms are longer, but also Connor is doing great from Chris shots. According to the scorecards, Chris took the first round. Unfortunately, Connor was not at his weight class and it was unable to press down Chris. But how he wanted to kill Eubank showed that this fight is going to be a bloody war. During the second round, we can see that Connor Benn started to feel the distance. He literally started to fly in Eubank, and he started to work dirty as Evander Holyfield. The referee gave him a warning. Connor is showing a fantastic footwork, but an attack from the far hand is killing him. Because he is missing a lot. Sooner or later, the gas tank will become empty. Connor decided to work by long jabs. And Chris started to have some problems because he is not able anymore to punch and he started to catch Ben's belly. This round is taking Connor the same as the third one, but here he started to make a very bad thing. He decided to make fast hooks to knock out Chris, and of course he is missing because Chris is standing very far and that thing is burning his gas tank. In the third round, Chris started to change the tactic and work for catching Ben. He missed a very dangerous punch and was rocked. Ben started to literally kill him in that fight, but the problem is that Chris is turning on dirty boxing. Ben is losing his rhythm. Also, he feels no power to make some serious damage to Chris, and in that round he started to slowing down. When Connor Benn fought before in his weight class, he was a pressing machine. But here he must rebuild his fighting style and fight from far distance. He can make it only like a bullet, and the drawing of the fight started to be different. In the fourth round, it was obvious how Eubank started to use more jabs. That is how he is breaking the rhythm of Connor Benn, and he started to make some combinations, because Ben is unable to close the distance. Just have a look how small he is. Here also Ben started to try to make turn on some dirty boxing. Chris is unable to work so fast, but his punches are longer, and here Ben was rocked a little bit. And right after that, it was obvious that he slowed down a little bit. That round took Chris the same as all rounds before the 8th. Chris Eubank found his rhythm, and Connor started to make short punches. He is unable to make it from far distance anymore, but the problem is that Eubank is turning on dirty boxing again. But in the 8th round, Connor started to grab the victory. He decided to return back to his plan, which worked great. But the power was lost. Chris Eubank started to strike from different angles. Ben decided to dodge from the punches and strike back, but he added some angles. Unfortunately, he was too exhausted in that fight, and he was not able to work anymore like that, because last 3 rounds showed that Chris Eubank is naturally stronger. He has an advantage of long arms, and he is simply bigger than Ben. That's why he is taking this fight. The 12th round became a bloody war. Nobody wanted to give away a victory. That's how both fighters left all their power inside the ring. But unfortunately, it was obvious who was the winner of that fight. Turki Alalsheikh wanted to make an immediate rematch of that fight, because that fight definitely can be called a fight of the year. And it was announced the second fight in September in London. But later it was cancelled. Chris Eubank is unable to fight that date for unnamed reason, but his cousin Harlem Eubank is wishing to face Connor Benn, the fighter from the same category, and that thing can add a very interesting chapter for their stories. Because for the first time when Nigel Benn fought with Chris Eubanks Sr., the result was the victory of Chris Eubanks Sr. as TKO, but when they faced for the second time, the result was a draw. What Connor Benn must improve to win that fight? First of all, he must gain some more weight, because that is not his category. He is very small. He can't strike so hard. In the end of the 12th round, he was a step from being knockout. Secondly, he must spend his gas tank much more smart, because after the fight with Chris Van Heerden, it was obvious that he is working only the first part of the fight. During the second part, his opponent is not afraid to rush forward, and that is another one problem. Also, he is missing a lot when he is trying to fight by hooks. The precision is ruining his fights inside the ring. Technically, we can see that he felt himself great in his war. According to his Instagram, he probably started to gain some weight for the moving up. But we will break down their second fight in the next video, where already Connor Benn defeated Chris Eubank.